Come on. Hey. Good afternoon and welcome to Grief Support Group this afternoon. This is a chance for us to take a moment and pause and be intentional about our grief, maybe collect our thoughts a little bit. Welcome if this is your first time. Welcome if you've been here before. I will say it again at the end of this broadcast, but we're continuing the broadcast Grief Support Group for now. For a couple reasons. When COVID hit, I decided on which activities we would broadcast, and the Praying with Scripture group and the Grief Support Group were the two that I decided to do, not just because they are the ones that are most possible, that are very possible to do over broadcast, although I never would have thought of doing either one of them over broadcast if it hadn't been for COVID. But the other thing is that I think these are two practices and experiences that are very much in the center of our life these days, or need to be. And so practices like prayer keep us grounded, and grief is something that we're all experiencing, grief of many different sorts. And of course, when grief happens in any way, it ripples out and touches all the other griefs that are, some of them unprocessed, some of them have been with us for a long time, and They just come up in different forms now and again. So this is really important work that you're doing not only on behalf of yourself, but also on behalf of and as part of this community, and figuring out what it means to live healthily together in this particular time in our life together. That said, next week, this will not be broadcast. Next week, on Monday afternoon, same time, 3:30, in B Lounge. That's the one that's next to Brian's office, kind of next to the kitchen. We will have an in-person grief support group. So if you found this helpful, then trust me, gather your courage and come and join the in-person group. If you have any questions ahead of time, let me know. Because one important thing in the midst of grief is expressing yourself and being with others, particularly others who have had grief experiences as well, who are in the midst of their own grief. Because there's something about that experience that is very difficult to communicate, very difficult to understand, unless it's something that you've been through. So please come next Monday at 3:30. In the meantime, we're reading Rebuilding and Remembering, this book by Kenneth Hawk. And he is the founder and director of Stephen Ministries. And this is the fourth book in the 4-book series called Rebuilding and Remembering. The series is called Journeying Through Grief. So this is a book that's starting to sort of look to the future. So I just want to remind us all that wherever you are, that's where you are. You don't need to be somewhere other than where you are. It can take as long as it takes to find your way to moments of healing. So if this resonates with you, then that's really good. If it feels unreachable to you, that's absolutely fine. There's no right or wrong here. But my hope is that something in here will either provide a little bit of hope or some sense of possibility from others who have been through this. This is chapter 7. I'll read a chapter, and then there are about 3 chapters left in this book. I'll read a chapter, and then we'll have some silence for reflection. You might want to have something to jot some notes with or to journal with. Healing through helping. One of the most significant changes for grieving people happens on the inside. A man who lost his wife told me, "I used to just feel sorry for other people when they lost a loved one. Now I have empathy. I know how much it can hurt, and I'm much more willing to be with them in their pain." A woman whose brother died told me, "I know now the value of just being there for someone. I know I don't have to try to fix things or explain it all away. I can just be there for them and listen and care." Nearly every grieving person I've talked with has told me they've become more caring and compassionate with others who have experienced losses. They know what it's like to lose a loved one and are much more sensitive to other people's needs. Over the years, I've also learned another amazing thing. When people give of themselves, they also receive. I've seen this countless times. When someone reaches out and cares for someone else, the person who is doing the caring benefits almost as much as the person who is receiving the care. The sequence of care is really amazing. Those who lose a loved one need people who really listen and care. People who have suffered a loss are much more sensitive and caring to others who are hurting. When one person gives care to another person, both end up benefiting. There's a quote by Jimmy Carter: "Wiping away someone else's tears is sometimes necessary to help us dispel our own." This is one reason why grief support groups are so effective for so many people. People come to these groups to receive care for themselves, but part of what they do during each meeting is to care for and support each other, and through those compassionate actions, they experience healing themselves. My fear in writing this chapter was that people could possibly get the wrong impression about reaching out to others. Some might look at it as an obligation, an assignment they need to complete in order to feel better. Or they might throw themselves into helping others as a way of avoiding their own painful feelings. But neither of these motivations would be good for their own grief journey. Look to your heart for your motivation. When you are ready and when you feel it deep inside, reach out to help someone else who may need it. How you do it, whether calling someone, sending a card, writing a letter, or some other action, depends on what's comfortable, natural, and meaningful to you. It doesn't have to be big or magnanimous. Look for even a small way to reach out to someone else. Not only will it be a godsend for the other person, but you might find it brings healing to you as well. From St. Francis of Assisi, "For it is in giving that we receive." A father I met at a conference may have said it best. His son had died a few years earlier, and he now takes the opportunity whenever he can to relate to other parents who lose a child. He said, "Helping others won't bring my son back or take away all the pain, but every time I see someone else experience a little healing, I feel a little bit of that healing again myself. It helps to see some good coming out of my sorrow." So maybe a question for reflection on this chapter is, in what ways have you experienced the power of reaching out to others as being a healing influence on yourself? Or maybe how can you imagine that happening? Another question might be, have you noticed a change in your ability to listen or your empathy that has come about as part of your grief journey? I also forgot to do our normal beginning of the time check in with yourself. So that might be another thing you do during this time. Take a few deep breaths and check in. See where you are in this moment or where you have been in this past week. Chapter 8. Rebuilding is not abandoning. A woman who had a stillborn baby described one of the most meaningful and healing encounters she had in her grief. After church one day, an older woman whom she hardly knew pulled her aside, gave her a warm hug, and quietly said, "I've never told anyone about this, but 37 years ago I had a baby who was stillborn, and I want to assure you of one thing. You will never forget. I promise you, you will never forget your baby. He is your baby, and you are his mother. You will remember him always. The woman said that these words were especially freeing for her because one of her deep down fears was that she would someday forget her baby. That fear kept her clinging to her sadness, afraid to let go of her grief. But she now knew that she could go on in her life without abandoning her baby. He would always hold a special place in her heart. Some people resist rebuilding a new life because they're afraid to let go of their sorrow, fearful that letting go means forgetting or dishonoring the memory of their loved one. If they laugh or have fun again, they feel guilty, as if they can keep their loved one's memory alive only by living a life of sorrow. One woman said, "If I felt even a bit of happiness, guilt would overwhelm me. I thought it meant I was forgetting my dad." A man told me, "Sometimes I felt that letting go of my grief would actually mean letting go of my son, and I never wanted to do that." Here's a quote by Helen Keller. "What we have once enjoyed and deeply loved, we can never lose, for all that we love deeply becomes part of us." Rebuilding a new life does not mean you've abandoned or forgotten your loved one, or that you don't love him or her anymore. You don't have to choose between living again and remembering your loved one. He or she will always have a cherished place in your heart. So give yourself permission to live again, to laugh again, to enjoy life again without feeling guilty. Living again affirms your loved one, who would want the best for you. And quote from Genesis, "I, the Lord, am with you and will watch over you wherever you go." A woman described it to me this way: "After my mother died, I was sad for a long time. Then I realized that the best way I could honor her would be to try to live with the positive attitude she had, and to instill in my children the unconditional love and the appreciation for life that she taught me. In that way, her legacy can live on for generations." I don't know what would be a good question for this section, but maybe journal your thoughts about the title, "Rebuilding is Not Abandoning." Chapter 9, Healing Memories. Memories are like Greek theater masks, a frowning face and a smiling one. Your memories of a loved one can frown and be painful, but they can also smile and bring comfort and warmth. Both faces of memories are blessings that help in healing. One fear people have about memories is that they will always hurt, always lead to tears or pain. While it's true that certain memories may hurt sometimes, the pain gradually lessens, and over time, the warm, comforting memories can outweigh the sorrowful ones. A quote by Khalil Gibran, "When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight." If some of your memories are still very painful, let yourself experience them anyway. Don't try to run away from them as if you could. Just like difficult feelings, the best way to take the sting out of painful memories is to recognize, accept, and express them. Share your memory with a trusted friend. Talk about your feelings as they surface, and let your tears and emotions flow. You may need to talk about the painful memory and the feelings it stirs up more than once. Each time it will lose a little of its power over you. A quote by John Hall Wheelock. With love that is almost joy, I remember them, lost and all mine forever. At the same time, tap into happier memories. Look through your photo albums. Remember birthdays, holidays, vacations, celebrations, quiet times, milestones. If you like journaling, write about the good times. Describe special moments to a trusted friend. Exchange cherished stories about your loved one with others close to you. The more you talk about the good memories, the more power they will gain. One woman told me that a turning point for her came when she sat down to make a scrapbook of her mother's life. Looking through the old pictures helped me relive many happy memories. I was able to see her as a young wife and mother. That helped me begin to forget the memories of her illness and to finally celebrate her entire life. People sometimes worry they'll forget their loved one. That person will always be a special part of you, and memories help keep it so. As one woman told me, memories are my connection to him. Whether they make me laugh, smile, or cry, they keep him close to me. Another said, Mom's in my heart now. She goes with me wherever I go. Sharing memories with others can multiply the healing. One man described how he and a number of his aunts and uncles gathered at his father's grave on the first Memorial Day after his death. They brought folding chairs and sat there for hours, telling story after story. The man heard tales about his dad growing up that he had never heard before. He said, I went home that day feeling closer to my dad than ever before, in a different way. I had a whole new set of memories to hold on to. Memories hurt, memories help, memories heal. A quote by Frederick Buechner. Even the saddest things can become, once we have made peace with them, a source of wisdom and strength. Question for reflection or journaling is talk about the role your memories have played in your grief journey. The last chapter in this book, Chapter 10, God's Aloha. A treasured family photo sits proudly on a shelf behind my desk. It is of my wife, Joan, myself, and our two daughters, Charity and Amity. The photo was taken at a luau on a trip to Hawaii, and the backdrop is one of Hawaii's awe-inspiring sunsets. This photo means more to me with each passing year. It was taken at the sunset of Joan's life, and what a beautiful life it was. Though it marks an ending, it's also a sign of hope and new beginnings for me. The sun never sets, but that it also rises to start a new day. And it's that new day that I'm waiting for. You see, I believe I haven't seen the last or the best of Joan. One day I will finish my own journey on earth as she did, and as I stand before God, there she will be too, only better than I ever remembered her, radiating the glory and goodness of God, who made and loves us all. Then I believe I'll understand completely for the first time what love really is. I'll see how our love for each other on earth is but a reflection of the real thing, in the same way a photo of a Hawaiian sunset can never match being there and seeing the colors paint sky and sea, highlight her hair, and shine in her eyes. So too, I believe it will be for you and your loved one. Your grief is real. The pain of your loss is real. The sun has gone down on one who gave your life joy and meaning. But that's not the end of the story. In God's book, endings are always the preludes to new beginnings. Part of the beauty of every sunset is that it gives us hope for a new day. A quote from Revelation: "He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." In Hawaii, instead of saying goodbye or hello, people say aloha. Aloha both bids farewell and welcomes. Aloha also means love and affection, the kind that doesn't just come and go, but endures through all our hellos and goodbyes. So I close these 4 books with aloha, with love and affection for you, my grieving friend. Aloha in your goodbyes, your losses, your tears. Aloha in your hopes and dreams for the future. Aloha in your laughter, your loves, and your life. Aloha. God loves you and holds you in the palm of his hands. Aloha. God will one day welcome you home and reunite you with your loved one and all who've gone before you. Aloha, until we meet again in that day with no pain and suffering, but only God's light and love in us and around us forever. Aloha. And the final word of thanks that he writes in this book: I want to thank all those who have given life to this book by opening their hearts and sharing their stories with me at conferences and workshops, in conversations and letters. And I want to thank you too for allowing me to walk with you during this time. I will be deeply gratified if you have found some comfort and practical help in these 4 books. Because everyone's story is different, I'm always happy to hear from readers like you. If these books have touched you in some way, or if you have any insights about grief that you'd like to share, please write to tell me about your own experiences. May God continue to walk with you. Maybe at the end of this book, we'll take a few deep breaths and ask yourself the question, how are you going to take care of yourself in the midst of your grief journey? And what from this time do you want to take with you into the next week? Thank you for joining in this group. Again, there will not be a broadcast of this next week. There will instead be a face-to-face meeting. This is the first face-to-face meeting we've had of the grief group since last year, I think. So please feel free to join us. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know. And if you would like to talk at any point, please also let me know. I don't know what book we'll be doing next. If you have a suggestion of a book or an article that has really been helpful to you, please let me know that, and we'll head toward exploring that in our groups. And as you transition from this time into the rest of your day, find a way to take care of yourself, find a way to express, find a way to connect. And I will see you next week.